Have you ever felt like you don't quite fit in? Like there's something about the way your mind works that sets you apart from everyone around you? Perhaps you've been told you're too quiet, too intense, too strange. Perhaps you've spent your whole life wondering if something is wrong with you because you see the world differently than most people seem to. Well, I'm here to tell you something that might change everything. What if those peculiar habits, those odd behaviors that make you feel like an outsider, are actually signs of something extraordinary? What if your strangeness is in fact your genius trying to express itself? In the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you 10 seemingly weird habits that psychology has identified as markers of exceptionally high intelligence. And I suspect as we go through them, you'll recognize yourself in ways that are both surprising and deeply validating. Now, if this message resonates with you, if you know someone who needs to hear that their weirdness is actually their gift, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with them, because the world desperately needs people who think differently to stop apologizing for who they are and start embracing it. Let's begin. Imagine for a moment that the mind is not a machine at all, but a kind of living river, forever flowing, forever rearranging itself without asking our permission. And in that current, there are depths most people never trouble themselves to notice. Not the sort of cleverness one parades around to win approval, but a subtler, older intelligence. An intelligence that doesn't always behave rationally, at least not in the way the everyday world defines the term, yet somehow carries within its oddities the unmistakable fragrance of insight, of genius even. You see, we live in a world that loves conformity. Society has this delightful habit of creating boxes for people, neat little categories where everyone is supposed to fit. And when someone doesn't fit, when their behavior seems peculiar or odd, we call them eccentric, we call them strange. But what if I told you that some of the strangest habits, the most peculiar patterns of behavior, are actually the fingerprints of an extraordinarily intelligent mind? What if the very things that make you feel like an outsider are the precise qualities that mark you as someone whose consciousness operates on a different frequency altogether? Let me share with you 10 of these so-called weird habits. And as I do, I invite you to consider whether you recognize yourself in any of them. Not to boost your ego, mind you, but to help you understand that what you've perhaps been ashamed of, what you've tried to hide or suppress, might actually be the most authentic expression of your extraordinary mind. The first habit: they speak to themselves as if conducting an orchestra of thoughts. Now, I've spent a great deal of my life talking to myself, and I don't mean mumbling under my breath or having the occasional internal monologue. I mean actual conversations, sometimes out loud when I'm alone, where I play both parts, questioning and answering, challenging and defending. To an outsider, this might seem like the beginning of madness. But here's what's really happening. The highly intelligent mind is constantly processing layers upon layers of information. It's like having multiple radio stations playing simultaneously, each on a different frequency. And sometimes the only way to tune into one clear signal is to externalize it, to give it voice, to hear it outside the echo chamber of your skull. When you speak your thoughts aloud, you're not going mad. You're organizing chaos into clarity. You're taking the abstract and making it concrete. You're testing ideas against the reality of sound and space. Think of it this way. A composer doesn't keep the entire symphony locked inside their head. They write it down. They play it through. They adjust and refine. Your mind is doing the same thing when you talk to yourself. You're composing solutions, testing theories, examining arguments from multiple angles. And the beautiful irony is that the people who think you're strange for doing this are the very ones whose thoughts remain forever tangled because they never learned to externalize them, to give them the space they need to breathe and evolve. The second habit: they overthink, but not from anxiety, from an insatiable need to understand. Let me tell you something about overthinking. In our modern world, we've pathologized it. We've decided that anyone who thinks too deeply about something must be anxious, must be trapped in their own head, must be suffering from some kind of mental disorder. But there's a vast difference between anxious rumination and intellectual exploration, and the highly intelligent mind knows this difference intimately. When a person with extraordinary intelligence examines a situation, they don't just see the surface, they see the mechanism beneath. They see the causes and the effects, the ripples spreading out in concentric circles from every decision, every action. They see what's invisible to others because their mind refuses to accept simple answers when complex truths exist. This isn't anxiety. This is curiosity in its purest form. This is the refusal to live in a shallow understanding of reality. Yes, it takes them longer to make decisions sometimes. Yes, they might seem paralyzed by choice. But what's actually happening is far more sophisticated. Their brain is running simulations, testing scenarios, weighing variables that others don't even know exist. And when they finally choose, when they finally act, they do so with a depth of understanding that makes their decisions remarkably effective. The quick decision isn't always the smart decision. Sometimes the intelligent thing to do is to wait, to observe, to think, to overthink, if you will. Because in that space of contemplation, truth reveals itself. The third habit. They walk alone, not to escape the world, but to enter it more fully. There's something almost magical about walking, isn't there? The rhythm of your feet, the movement of your body through space, the way your mind begins to wander when your body has something simple to do. And highly intelligent people understand this instinctively. They crave long walks, solitary journeys where conversation isn't required and social performance can be dropped like a heavy coat. But here's what people don't understand. These solitary walks aren't an escape from thinking, they're an invitation to it. When you walk alone, your mind enters a state that psychologists call diffuse thinking. Your focus softens, your attention broadens, and suddenly, connections that seemed impossible when you were sitting at your desk become perfectly clear. The solution that eluded you in the meeting room presents itself between one step and the next. This is because intelligence isn't just about focusing harder. It's about knowing when to let go, when to allow your mind to roam free, when to trust that the unconscious will do its work if you simply give it space and motion. The intelligent person walks alone because they understand that sometimes the deepest thinking happens when you're not trying to think at all. The fourth habit, they maintain islands of chaos in a sea of structure. Now here's something that confuses people endlessly. You walk into the workspace of a highly intelligent person and it's a disaster. Papers everywhere, coffee cups forming cities on the desk, books stacked in precarious towers that seem to defy the laws of physics, and you think, how can someone so smart be so disorganized? But look closer, open their computer, check their digital files, examine their actual work systems, and you'll find something remarkable: perfect organization, meticulous structure, everything labeled, categorized, accessible. So what's going on here? The intelligent mind understands something fundamental about energy and attention. It understands that perfect organization in all areas of life is impossible and, more importantly, unnecessary. So it makes a choice. It decides what matters and what doesn't. The desk is irrelevant. The physical space is just space. But the ideas, the projects, the systems that actually produce value, these must be organized with precision. This selective organization is a form of wisdom. It's the understanding that you can't do everything perfectly, so you must choose your battles. The chaos in one area actually serves the order in another. It's permission to be human in the domains that don't matter, so you can be excellent in the domains that do. The fifth habit, they experience sudden, intense obsessions with seemingly random topics. Have you ever found yourself completely consumed by a subject you knew nothing about just days before? Have you ever spent an entire weekend learning everything possible about, say, the migration patterns of monarch butterflies, or the mathematics of fractals, or the history of the printing press, and then, just as suddenly, moved on to something entirely different? This is the mark of a mind that feeds on learning itself. For the highly intelligent person, the act of understanding is its own reward. They don't need the information to be practical. They don't need it to serve some immediate purpose. The joy is in the discovery, in the moment when something that was mysterious becomes clear, when a new pattern emerges from apparent chaos. What looks like random obsession is actually the brain's dopamine system responding to intellectual stimulation. It's no different from an athlete feeling euphoria during a challenging run. The intelligent mind is designed to learn, and when it encounters something fascinating, it dives in completely, absorbing everything it can until the initial mystery is solved. Then it moves on, not out of boredom, but because the hunt for new understanding has become more interesting than reviewing what's already known. This isn't dilettantism, it's the polymathic impulse, the recognition that all knowledge is connected, that every new thing you learn creates bridges to understanding other things. The person who obsesses over random topics isn't scattered. They're building a vast, interconnected web of understanding that will serve them in ways they can't yet predict. The sixth habit: they find small talk genuinely painful. Let me be honest with you. I've spent much of my life avoiding cocktail parties. Not because I dislike people, quite the opposite, but because the conversational norms at such gatherings, the endless small talk about weather and traffic and the mundane details of daily life, feel like a particular form of torture to the highly intelligent mind. And here's why. The intelligent brain is always seeking depth. It's like a diving bird that needs to plunge beneath the surface to find nourishment. Small talk keeps you floating on top, never diving, never reaching anything substantial. It's not that people with high intelligence are snobs or antisocial. It's that their brains literally crave more complex stimulation. Watch what happens when the conversation shifts. When someone brings up an interesting idea, a philosophical question, a complex problem, suddenly the person who was quiet and withdrawn becomes animated, engaged, alive. They're not choosing to be boring during small talk. Their brain simply isn't designed to find satisfaction in shallow waters. This can make them seem aloof, arrogant even. But it's not arrogance. It's a fundamental mismatch between how their mind processes conversation and what conventional social interaction demands. They're not rejecting people. They're rejecting superficiality. The seventh habit: they question everything, even their own certainties. The truly intelligent mind is comfortable with doubt. In fact, it courts doubt. It actively seeks out information that challenges its current understanding because it knows that certainty is often the enemy of truth. While others cling to their beliefs with religious fervor, the intelligent person holds their opinions lightly, always ready to revise them in the face of new evidence. This habit can be frustrating for those around them. Friends and family want definitive answers. They want someone to take a strong stand. But the intelligent person knows that most issues are far more nuanced than they appear, that truth rarely fits into neat categories of right and wrong, black and white. So they hesitate, they qualify, they say, "It depends," and "on the other hand," and "but have you considered?" This isn't weakness, this is intellectual honesty. This is the refusal to pretend you know more than you do. And in a world full of people who are absolutely certain about things they barely understand, this habit of questioning everything, especially oneself, is perhaps the rarest form of intelligence. The eighth habit: they need solitude like others need social connection. For most people, being alone for extended periods is something to be avoided. It's lonely, it's boring, it's depressing. But for the highly intelligent mind, solitude isn't isolation, it's restoration. It's the space where they can finally be themselves without the exhausting performance that social interaction demands. You see, when you're highly intelligent, you're constantly translating, you're constantly dumbing down your thoughts, simplifying your language, hiding your true reactions because you know that full authenticity would alienate you from others. This translation work is exhausting. And solitude is where you can finally stop translating, where you can let your mind run at its natural speed, think its natural thoughts, be its natural self. This need for solitude isn't antisocial, it's self-preservation. It's the recognition that your energy is finite and must be carefully managed. The intelligent person doesn't avoid people because they don't like them. They retreat into solitude because it's the only place where they can recharge the batteries that social interaction drains. The ninth habit: they notice patterns everywhere, even where none exist. The human brain is a pattern recognition machine, but the highly intelligent brain takes this to an extreme. It sees connections between seemingly unrelated things. It notices rhythms in chaos. It finds meaning in randomness. Sometimes this leads to genuine insights, breakthrough ideas that others missed because they weren't looking closely enough. But sometimes it leads to seeing patterns that aren't really there. The intelligent mind is so good at finding connections that it occasionally connects things that don't actually connect. This can make them seem paranoid or overly conspiracy-minded, but it's not paranoia. It's the natural consequence of a brain that's wired to find order in disorder. The key is that the intelligent person knows this about themselves. They recognize when they might be pattern matching too aggressively. They double-check their insights. They remain skeptical even of their own conclusions. This self-awareness transforms what could be a liability into one of their greatest strengths. The 10th habit, they feel simultaneously connected to and alienated from humanity. Here's perhaps the most poignant aspect of high intelligence, the feeling of being both part of and apart from the human race. The intelligent person understands people deeply. They see the mechanisms of human behavior, the patterns of thought and emotion that drive us all. This understanding creates profound compassion. They see why people act as they do, even when those actions are harmful or foolish. But this same understanding creates distance. When you see the patterns, you can't unsee them. When you understand the mechanisms, you can't pretend you don't. And this knowledge, this deep insight into human nature, can make you feel like an observer of life rather than a full participant in it. You're watching a movie you understand too well to fully lose yourself in. This dual experience of connection and alienation is perhaps the defining emotional characteristic of high intelligence. It's why so many gifted people feel lonely even in crowds, understood even by close friends. They're speaking a language that sounds like everyone else's, but contains subtleties and nuances that others don't perceive. But here's what I want you to understand. If you recognize yourself in these habits, if you've spent your life feeling strange or different or wrong somehow, you're not broken, you're not malfunctioning. Your mind is simply operating at a frequency that most people don't tune into, and while this can be lonely, while it can be difficult, it's also a gift. It's the capacity to see deeper, think more clearly, understand more fully than those around you. The question isn't whether you have these weird habits. The question is, what will you do with this extraordinary instrument you've been given? Will you try to suppress it, to fit in, to be normal? Or will you embrace it, nurture it, allow it to flourish in all its peculiar glory? Because the world needs minds like yours, not despite their strangeness, but because of it. The progress of human civilization has always been driven by those who thought differently, who saw what others couldn't see, who refused to accept the conventional wisdom simply because it was conventional. So the next time you catch yourself talking to yourself, or diving deep into some random obsession, or walking alone while the world socializes, don't apologize, don't hide. Understand that your mind is doing what it was designed to do. It's thinking, it's exploring, it's pushing beyond the boundaries that contain lesser imaginations. You're not weird, you're awake. And in a world that's mostly sleepwalking, that's the most valuable thing you could possibly be.